I mean, he had Tom bloodied up, and you know, Tom didn't want to continue in the fight.
Look, I might look like an idiot. Sometimes I might even talk like an idiot, but when it comes to fighting, I know what I'm talking about.
Tom Aspinall's problems with the UFC didn't start with Cyril Gaines's brutal double-eye poke, but that moment made everything permanent. And let me tell you, what happened in that octagon wasn't just a simple foul, it was the catalyst that would expose months of simmering tension between one of the most dominant heavyweight champions and the organization that made him famous. After months of friction over matchmaking and management decisions, Aspinall has already begun making quiet moves toward the PFL, and the step he just took might confirm everything we've been suspecting. So buckle up, because we're about to dive deep into a story that could reshape the entire heavyweight division. Let's get into the details, and trust me, this is way bigger than most people realize.
I mean, he had Tom bloodied up, and you know, Tom didn't want to continue in the fight.
The night everything changed. Before we dive deep into this rabbit hole of controversy, before we unpack the layers upon layers of drama, betrayal, and frustration that have led us to this absolutely pivotal moment in heavyweight history, we need to go back to where this entire saga truly began. We're talking about the night that changed everything for Tom Aspinall's relationship with the UFC forever. We need to talk about what happened on October 25th inside the Etihad Arena in Abu Dhabi, at an event that was supposed to cement Tom Aspinall's legacy as one of the greatest heavyweight champions the UFC has ever produced. This wasn't just any fight, folks. This was meant to be his crowning moment. UFC 3021 was built as a clash of styles that had fight fans absolutely salivating with anticipation. You had the explosive wrestling and devastating ground game of Tom Aspinall going up against the elite kickboxing and masterful footwork of Cyril Gaines. This was Aspinall's first defense of his undisputed heavyweight title, a belt he had worked his entire professional career to obtain, grinding through years of setbacks and politics to finally reach the mountaintop. The stakes could not have been higher for both athletes standing inside that octagon with millions watching around the world. The fight started exactly the way most experts predicted it would, and honestly, it was shaping up to be an absolute war. Early exchanges were competitive as hell, with Gaines landing clean shots that bloodied Aspinall's nose, while Aspinall attempts looking to drag the French striker into the deep waters of grappling where he knew he held the advantage. The energy inside the arena was absolutely electric, with fans on the edge of their seats knowing they were witnessing a fight that could go in any direction at any moment. But then, at exactly 4 minutes and 35 seconds into the very first round, something happened that would change the trajectory of Tom Aspinall's entire career forever, and I mean forever. During a close-range exchange that looked completely routine, Gaines's extended fingers poked Aspinall in both eyes simultaneously. An accidental but absolutely devastating illegal foul under UFC rule. Aspinall immediately signaled distress, covering his face and stating to referee Jason Herzog that he simply could not see anything at all. What happened next shocked the entire mixed martial arts community and set off a chain of events that we're still dealing with today. After a pause for medical evaluation, the referee declared the bout a no contest, as Aspinall was deemed unable to safely proceed with the fight. And just like that, ladies and gentlemen, what was supposed to be Tom Aspinall's crowning achievement, his moment of glory, turned into one of the most controversial moments in recent UFC heavyweight history.
Well, listen, I didn't continue. I'll tell you why I didn't continue. Because I'm not a dummy. Like, I'm not going to go out there and fight one of the best strikers in the world if I can't see.
With double vision.
With any eye. Look.
Now you might be thinking to yourself, okay, it was an accidental foul. These things happen in MMA all the time. Fighters get hurt. What's the big deal here? Well, let me tell you exactly what the big deal is, because the fallout from this single incident has been nothing short of catastrophic for the relationship between Tom Aspinall and the UFC brass. And we're talking about damage that might never be repaired. In the immediate aftermath of the fight, Aspinall received heavy criticism from segments of the MMA community. And I'm talking about brutal, relentless criticism. Social media absolutely erupted with accusations that he had exaggerated the injury, that he lacked the warrior spirit to push through the adversity, with countless fans drawing comparisons to past fights where competitors continued despite similar fouls. The criticism was relentless, it was brutal, and it was deeply personal in ways that had to cut this man to his core. But here's where things took a turn that nobody saw coming. And here's where the real drama began to unfold in ways that would shock the entire MMA world. Because it wasn't just random keyboard warriors on the internet who were questioning Tom Aspinall's decision to stop fighting. It was the president of the Ultimate Fighting Championship himself who threw his own champion under the bus.
What's been going on in your exciting life for the last 5 weeks?
Oh, mate, I've been having a lovely time just in and out of hospital. getting all kinds of different tests done on my eyes and speaking to specialists, speaking to surgeons, speaking to doctors. Oh, it's been a fantastic time.
Those words, ladies and gentlemen, those words right there from Dana White himself, tell you everything you need to know about how this situation spiraled completely out of control. Tom didn't want to continue. Not Tom couldn't continue due to a medical emergency. Not Tom was medically unable to continue because of a serious injury. No, Tom didn't want to continue, as if this was some kind of mental weakness or lack of desire. Do you understand the implications of what the president of the UFC was suggesting about his own heavyweight champion to the entire world? Dana White contributed to this devastating narrative during the post-event press conference, stating only Tom knows what happened, and implying that the decision to stop might reflect Aspinall's unwillingness rather than medical necessity. White later elaborated in subsequent interviews, saying, "I see, but as far as we know, he doesn't have a detached retina, there's no damage to the eye," based on what he claimed were preliminary ringside assessments that turned out to be completely wrong. These comments from the most powerful man in mixed martial arts absolutely poured gasoline on an already raging fire of controversy. Some fans began labeling Aspinall a quitter, or suggesting he used the foul as an excuse because Gaines had gained early momentum in the fight. The narrative was being shaped in real time by the president of the company, and it was not being shaped in Tom Aspinall's favor whatsoever. But what nobody knew at the time, what the entire world was about to discover in the weeks that followed, was that Tom Aspinall's injury was far more severe than anyone, including Dana White, had publicly acknowledged, and when the truth finally came out, it would expose a rift between the UFC's heavyweight champion and the organization that may never ever be repaired. The controversy largely subsided in the weeks following the event as attention shifted to other UFC events and the news cycle moved on to other stories. But then, around November 30, 2025, Aspinall broke his silence with a doctor's report and public statements that would vindicate everything he had said from the very beginning and expose just how wrong his critics had been. The medical documentation shared via social media and interviews detailed bilateral ocular trauma from the eye poke, including orbital soft tissue swelling, a minimal fracture of the right medial orbital wall, and persistent double vision that refused to go away weeks after the incident. But that wasn't even the worst part of the diagnosis. And when you hear this next part, you'll understand exactly why Tom Aspinall made the decision he made. Aspinall was diagnosed with Brown syndrome, a rare motility disorder where the superior oblique tendon sheath restricts upward eye movement, potentially caused by inflammation or trauma. This is not a minor inconvenience that you just tough out, ladies and gentlemen. This is a serious medical condition that could potentially require surgery on both of his eyes if conservative treatments fail to resolve the issue completely.
I was very disappointed. Yeah, very disappointed.
If he would have come up and said, poked in the eye, illegal, couldn't see, couldn't continue, serious injury, etc., people would have laid off. They would have taken cues from him.
It definitely didn't help the cause. Definitely didn't.
That right there tells you everything you need to know about why Tom Aspinall made the decision he made that night in Abu Dhabi. He wasn't being a coward like the internet trolls claimed. He wasn't quitting because the fight was getting difficult or because he was losing exchanges. He was protecting his long-term health and his entire career from permanent damage caused by an illegal foul that could have blinded him forever. And yet, despite all of this overwhelming medical evidence, despite the diagnosis from actual eye specialists who know what they're talking about, despite the documented proof that this was a serious career-threatening injury, damage to his reputation and his relationship with UFC leadership had already been done. The narrative had been set, the president of the company had already thrown him under the bus publicly, and now Tom Aspinall was dealing with the consequences of Dana White's premature and completely inaccurate statements to the media.
Disappointing.
I've spoken to the UFC since, but I've not spoken to, me and Dana don't really speak like that anyway, so.
Ever?
No, ever.
You can hear the frustration dripping from every single word when Aspinall finally spoke publicly about what he went through. 5 weeks of hospital visits, specialist consultations, and medical tests, all while keyboard warriors on the internet called him a quitter and questioned his toughness based on nothing but Dana White's initial reaction. This is the reality that Tom Aspinall has been living with since UFC 321, and it's pushed him closer and closer to the breaking point with the organization he once dedicated his entire career to building up, the betrayal and breaking point. Now that you understand the severity of what Tom Aspinall endured inside that octagon, now that you know the medical reality of what he was dealing with while the entire internet was calling him a coward and a quitter, what unfolded in the aftermath of UFC 321 reveals a pattern of behavior from UFC leadership that has pushed their heavyweight champion to the absolute breaking point, and honestly, I don't think there's any coming back from this level of damage to the relationship. When Tom Aspinall sat down for his first major interview since the fight on the Ariel Helwani show, he didn't hold back one bit. He didn't sugarcoat his feelings or try to play politics with his word. He laid everything out on the table for the entire world to see, and what he revealed about his relationship, or complete lack thereof, with Dana White was absolutely stunning to hear from a reigning UFC champion.
Has he sent you a text or DM in the aftermath? Hope you're feeling better.
No, nothing like that. Nothing like that. He actually, like I said, he started giving updates that there was nothing wrong with my eye, when that isn't the case.
Let that sink in for a moment, because this is incredibly telling about the dysfunction happening behind the scenes. If Dana White had simply come out and supported his heavyweight champion from the beginning, if he had simply acknowledged the severity of the injury and defended Aspinall's decision to protect his health and vision, the entire shifted in a completely different direction. The fans would have taken their cues from the boss and supported their champion through a difficult time. But instead, Dana chose a different path. One that left his champion hanging out to dry in front of the entire world while dealing with a serious medical crisis. Have you spoken to him since the incident? No. Is that normal for a heavyweight champion and the president of the UFC?
So you're not too happy then on what the president of the organisation is saying towards it?
Well, what do you think?
Tom didn't want to continue in the fight, so.
Look, we all know who is at fault here. What the are you talking about, huh?
And off the back of that, Tom, what have the UFC said?
Hunter Campbell, who I deal with personally, he's just said if they can help out in any way with doctors and stuff like that, that's what they'll do.
The UFC heavyweight champion of the world. Let me repeat that for emphasis. The man who holds the most prestigious title in the most prominent division of the most important mixed martial arts organization on the planet has never had a real relationship with the president of that organization. Think about how absolutely insane that is for a second. He's never had a meaningful conversation beyond saying hello here and there at events, and after suffering a career-threatening injury in the main event of a pay-per-view, Dana White didn't pick up the phone to check on his champion's well-being. He didn't send a text to see how the medical treatments were going. He didn't even slide into his DMs to offer support during what had to be the most difficult period of this man's professional career.
And obviously you've been a massive help to the UFC. You've taken a fight on 2 weeks' notice. You've taken a fight in the middle of the night. Been backup fighter for Jones versus Miocic, and then obviously the whole John Jones saga. How do you sort of see this going forward for yourself with the UFC?
I think right now we just got to focus on the health, innit? We just got to get everything back to normal, follow the doctor's orders, and that's all I can control right now. So we'll cross that bridge when I'm feeling better and everything's right.
Aspinall voiced deep frustration over the lack of direct communication from White, noting that while UFC executive Hunter Campbell offered support for medical needs, White provided public updates claiming no damage to the eye without ever consulting him directly about his actual condition. This is the man who took fights on 2 weeks' notice to save UFC events. This is the man who served as backup fighter for Jones versus Miocic, staying in camp for months just in case something happened. This is the man who sat on the sidelines for 15 months waiting patiently for a title shot while the UFC prioritized other matchups that made them more money. And this is how he's being treated by the organization he sacrificed so much for over the years. But the dysfunction goes even deeper than just the eye poke incident, and when you see the full picture of how Tom Aspinall has been treated, you'll understand why he's looking for the exit door. You see, Tom Aspinall's frustrations with the UFC have been building for years at this point, and this recent controversy was just the straw that broke the camel's back. His path to the title involved an interim belt win in 2023, followed by unification after John Jones's retirement in June. But the long layoffs, often 12 to 14 months between fights, have fueled debates about his activity level and the UFC's commitment to promoting him as a legitimate star attraction. And here's where things get really interesting. And here's where we start to see the financial motivations that might be driving Tom Aspinall towards the exit door and away from the UFC forever. In October 2025, Andy Aspinall, Tom's father and coach, publicly advised against signing a new UFC contract, emphasizing the potential for significantly higher earnings in professional boxing. This wasn't some random comment made in passing during a casual interview. This was a calculated statement designed to send a clear message to the UFC brass about the Aspinall camp's intentions moving forward. More money? Why not? Andy Aspinall told RMC Sport Combat, "He's got 3 more fights on his contract now and I don't want to sign a new contract. If you get into the top percentage of that sport, the UFC don't pay anywhere near as much as boxing does." And the comparison that everyone in the MMA world keeps making is to Francis Ngannou's trajectory, which should have UFC executives absolutely terrified. Remember, Ngannou's last UFC fight paid him approximately $600,000, but his boxing debut against Tyson Fury netted him around. That's not a marginal difference, ladies and gentlemen. That's a completely different universe of earning potential that the UFC simply cannot match under their current business model. Tom Aspinall himself has echoed this prize fighter mindset, stating, "You have to fight for the most money possible. We are putting our health and safety on the line, never say never." But the financial concerns aren't the only thing pushing Aspinall away from the UFC and towards other opportunities. There's also the matter of his close friendship with Ante Delija, the former PFL heavyweight champion who signed with the UFC in June 2025, and this friendship has created one of the most unusual situations in recent UFC history that has Dana White absolutely fuming behind the scenes. Aspinall has publicly declared that he would vacate his UFC heavyweight title rather than face Delija in a title fight, putting friendship above business in a way that's almost unheard of in professional sport. On the Schmo XTSN Gigs podcast in October 2025, Aspinall explained his reasoning clearly. "If I'd never won a title, we would have to fight, because that's my dream. But now I've done it, I'd be like, all vacated, and he can have his time. I wouldn't fight him. That's my guy." Dana White's reaction to this statement was characteristically blunt and dismissive. "I hate that. The thought of vacating it because you don't want to compete against somebody is absolutely insane. Do you see the pattern emerging here? Do you see how every single interaction between Tom Aspinall and UFC leadership seems to create more friction, more tension, more reasons for the heavyweight champion to look elsewhere for his future? The relationship is deteriorating right before our very eyes, and it seems like neither side is interested in repairing the damage."
Well, look, if you were sidelined from doing your job for like 15 months, not allowed to do anything, you train your ass off for 6 months for a fight, then to get double eye poked, be left with no vision for nearly 6 weeks because of an illegal move. How do you think I feel? Not feeling fantastic, am I?
When Dana White finally addressed the growing tension at the UFC 33 press conference on December 7, 2025, he attempted to walk back some of his earlier comments, attributing the situation to a misunderstanding and insisting, "Never once did I say anything negative about him or in a derogatory way." He clarified that his earlier remarks were based on initial reports that turned out to be completely wrong, and affirmed the UFC's active involvement in Aspinall's care during his recovery process. But for Tom Aspinall, who had spent weeks dealing with the fallout from those initial comments, the damage may already be done beyond any hope of repair. The trust has been broken in a fundamental way. The relationship, such as it ever was between these two men, has been irreparably damaged by weeks of public criticism and private neglect during the most difficult period of Aspinall's career. And now, with just 2 to 3 fights remaining on his UFC contract, the heavyweight champion of the world is actively looking at all of his options for the future, and those options are looking and more attractive compared to staying with the UFC.
A big shout out to everyone who has stuck there by me. A lot of haters out there who are living some very sad lives, who think they're eye doctors and have never... Listen, I'll double eye poke you full blast in the eyes and see if you can still write some grim comment on Instagram or YouTube or whatever. You let me know, you tough guys out there.
The PFL connection and what comes next. Now we arrive at the most explosive part of this entire story, and now we need to talk about what's really happening behind the scenes that most fans don't know about, and why the title of this video is not clickbait or speculation. It's the reality of the situation that Tom Aspinall finds himself in as we speak right now. You see, while Tom Aspinall remains the UFC heavyweight champion as of December 9, 2025, with no confirmed departure officially announced to the public yet, the writing is on the wall for anyone paying close enough attention to the signs and reading between the lines. The question is no longer if Tom Aspinall will leave the UFC, the question is when he'll make his move and where he will go next to continue his career. Aspinall's connection to the Professional Fighters League is primarily through his long-standing friendship and training partnership with Ante Delija, and this relationship runs much deeper than most people realize. The 2022 PFL heavyweight champion Delija won the PFL heavyweight tournament with TKOs over Matthias Scheffel and Renan Ferreira, plus a decision over Shelton Graves, earning the $1 million prize as the first Croatian PFL champion in the organization's history. Their bond stems from years as training partners at Aspinall BJJ in the UK, where they've pushed each other to become better fighters through countless hours of sparring and technique work. Now, some of you might be saying, but that doesn't mean Aspinall is going to the PFL. And you're right, friendship alone doesn't guarantee anything concrete in the business world. But consider the broader context of everything we've discussed today. Consider the broken relationship with Dana White that seems impossible to repair. Consider the massive financial incentives of boxing that dwarf anything the UFC can offer. Consider the fact that Aspinall has explicitly stated he would refuse to fight Delija Delija, even if it meant vacating his title. Delija himself has reciprocated this sentiment publicly, stating he would also refuse to fight Aspinall for the belt, highlighting the mutual respect and brotherhood between these two fighters that transcends professional competition. This kind of loyalty, this kind of genuine friendship is rare in professional sports, and it's clearly something that matters deeply to Tom Aspinall on a personal level that goes beyond just making money. Notice how carefully Aspinall chose his words in that moment during his recent interviews. He didn't say he was committed to the UFC long-term or express excitement about future fights with the organization. He didn't talk about wanting to defend his title multiple times or build a legacy within the UFC. He simply said they need to focus on his health first and cross that bridge when he's feeling better. That's not the language of a champion who's fully invested in his promotion's future plans. That's the language of someone keeping his options wide open and buying time to make the best decision for his career. The broader implications of this situation raise serious questions about fighter autonomy, divisional dynamics, and the balance between personal relationships and professional obligations in MMA that the UFC has never had to deal with before. With Delija's ranking and Aspinall's championship status, a matchup could theoretically arise if both continue winning fights and climbing the rankings. But Aspinall has made it abundantly clear that he will never let that fight happen under any circumstances, period. So where does this leave us? What's the most likely path forward for Tom Aspinall's career given everything we know? Analysts and insiders are predicting that Aspinall may exit the UFC after his current contract expires to pursue boxing, where the earning potential is exponentially higher than anything the UFC can realistically offer him under their pay structure. His father has been openly campaigning for this path for months now, and Aspinall himself has done nothing to shut down the speculation or commit to the UFC's future plans publicly. But there's another possibility that nobody is talking about openly, and one that makes more sense than most people realize, and that's where the PFL comes into play as a potential landing spot for the heavyweight champion. You see, the PFL has been aggressively signing former UFC champions and high-profile fighters looking to position themselves as a legitimate alternative to the UFC's dominance in the marketplace. And with Aspinall's close ties to Delija, with his frustrations toward UFC management boiling over into public statements, and with his desire to maximize his earnings during the prime of his career, a move to the PFL is not as far-fetched as it might initially seem to casual observers. Consider this important factor that everyone needs to understand. Tom Aspinall is 32 years old, which means he has a limited window to capitalize on his physical prime as a professional fighter. Every month he spends dealing with injuries, contract disputes, and promotional drama is a month he's not making the money he deserves for putting his body and his health on the line inside that cage for our entertainment. That frustration, that disappointment, that sense of being let down by the organization he's given so much to over the years, it's absolutely palpable in every word he speaks publicly. You can hear it in his voice. You can see it in his demeanor throughout every interview he's done since the eye poke incident. This is not a happy champion celebrating his success at the top of the sport and looking forward to future defenses. This is a man who feels disrespected, undervalued, and ready to explore his options elsewhere, even if it means walking away from the UFC forever. As of right now, Aspinall's career implications are uncertain, but not dire from a competitive standpoint. He has time to recover from his eye injury completely, and Dana White's recent comments suggest he still has protected status as champion within the organization's structure. A rematch with Gynes is likely planned for early 2026, potentially headlining a UK event given Aspinall's massive popularity in his home country and the money that fight would generate. But make no mistake about what's happening here behind all the public relations and corporate speak. The clock is ticking on Tom Aspinall's UFC tenure, with only 2 to 3 fights remaining on his contract, and with every indication that his camp has absolutely no intention of re-signing with the promotion under the current circumstances. We are watching the final chapter of Tom Aspinall's UFC career unfold in real time right before our eyes. Whether he ends up in boxing making tens of millions of dollars per fight, in the PFL reuniting with his close friend Delija in a promotion that might treat him better, or in some other venture entirely that we haven't even considered yet, one thing is crystal clear to anyone paying attention. Tom Aspinall is done being disrespected by the organization he gave everything to build up. He's done being undervalued while putting his health on the line for their profit margin. He's done being called a quitter by people who have never stepped foot inside an octagon or taken a punch in their entire lives. And most importantly, he's done letting Dana White control the narrative of his career and his legacy moving forward. If you enjoyed watching this video and want to stay updated on this developing story, then go ahead and click on any of the cards on your screen for more content, because this situation is far from over and we'll be covering every twist and turn as it unfolds.